Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're popping the top on an incredible story about a corporate takeover that turned into a masterclass in cultural change. We're going to see how PepsiCo, a global giant, didn't just buy a local soda factory in India, but somehow managed to win over its heart and soul. So here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll start with the two very different companies, then dive into the huge culture clash when they merged. After that, we'll look at the clever strategy for winning everyone over, the amazing results, and finally, what we can all learn from this. All right, let's set the scene. The year is 1994. The city is Mumbai, and two beverage makers from completely different universes are about to collide in a landmark deal. On one side, you've got Duke Sons, a local legend that's been around for over a century. The owners treated it like a big family, even calling the workers Dikra, which means child. It was a beloved local brand, but it was run with a very casual, go-with-the-flow attitude. And on the other side, you have PepsiCo, a global powerhouse. Everything is about process, data, and a super standardized way of doing business. It was the ultimate clash of opposites. So when PepsiCo bought Duke's, they quickly realized they weren't just buying bottling lines and some recipes. No, they were inheriting a century of unique and, as they were about to find out, very chaotic traditions. For the founding family, the Pundles, this deal felt pretty much inevitable. They knew they couldn't compete with the, quote, unlimited financial muscle of a giant like PepsiCo or its big rival, Coke. The only other option was to, in their own words, fight a losing battle. What the new PepsiCo managers found inside was, well, it was staggering. Get this. The plant had more than 3 times the number of employees PepsiCo standards called for. Some workers would punch in, work for a half hour, and then go sleep for an hour. There was no HR department, no personnel files, nothing. And gambling was a regular pastime on the factory floor. One manager said the place looked like a cowshed. The work culture wasn't just bad, it was basically non-existent.
So how in the world do you fix a situation like that? You don't come in with a hammer. Instead, PepsiCo developed a patient, careful strategy they called Pepsification, a full-on campaign to win the hearts and minds of the entire workforce.
And their plan was incredibly methodical. This wasn't just one single fix. It was a 5-part strategy designed to tackle everything at once, from the machinery and quality control to productivity to the bloated workforce and all those bad habits, all while making sure the union was on their side. The very first thing they did was send a clear, visible message. They painted the whole factory. They fixed the disgusting restrooms. They built a real canteen. And they gave every single worker brand new uniforms and shoes. Now, these weren't just surface-level changes. This was a signal, an investment, telling the workers, hey, we're here to make your lives better, not just to squeeze you for profit.
But, changing the paint on the walls is one thing. Changing mindsets is a whole lot harder. When PepsiCo brought in strict new quality checks, the workers were just baffled. One of them actually asked, all this hard work just to make colored water? For them, it just didn't compute.
On top of that skepticism, PepsiCo had to deal with some really ingrained discipline problems. Remember that gambling I mentioned? It was happening all the time, during work hours, in one specific spot in the factory. So how do you possibly stop that? Well, their solution was as dramatic as it was brilliant. First, they worked patiently to get the union leaders on their side. Then, they didn't just put up a sign banning gambling. No, they physically demolished the entire mezzanine floor where it was all happening. It was this huge, symbolic move that screamed, the old ways are literally gone.
Now, probably the trickiest part of this whole transformation was dealing with the fact that the plant was massively overstaffed. But instead of mass firings, PepsiCo played the long game. Over 12 years, they rolled out really generous voluntary retirement plans. This allowed them to slowly and carefully right-size the plant, going from almost 800 workers down to just 279, all without breaking their promise of job security.
So after all that patience, all that effort, all that winning hearts and minds, did it actually work? Oh, you bet it did. The results started coming in, and they were dramatic, measurable, and they proved the whole strategy was worth it.
The results were stunning. Inside PepsiCo India, they ranked all their plants. This factory went from 36th place, basically at the bottom of the barrel, all the way up to 6th place in just 2 years. It went from being the problem child to a total star player.
And that internal success translated directly to success on the street. Before the takeover, Duke's had a decent 30% of the market in Mumbai. After this turnaround, that share exploded to 55%. It just goes to show, when you fix things on the inside, you win on the outside. And the productivity numbers, these are just wild. Before, it took almost 800 workers to make 4.6 million cases of soda a year. After the transformation, fewer than 300 workers were pumping out over 7 million cases. Think about that. Less than half the people producing nearly double the output. It's incredible. But the real sign of victory, the ultimate proof that this whole thing had worked, wasn't about the numbers at all. In 1998, just 4 years in, the workers themselves went to management and asked to officially change the plant's name from Duke Sons to PepsiCo. This wasn't a top-down order. It was a bottom-up declaration of pride. That's when you know you've truly succeeded.
This whole thing is so much more than a business story, right? It's a powerful lesson in how to manage massive change. So, what are the big takeaways from this incredible turnaround?
I think it really boils down to this. Their success wasn't about just forcing new rules on people. It was about building relationships. They showed respect for local traditions, like continuing to celebrate the Ganesha festival at the plant. They learned that patience is a strategy, and that making those visible investments in people, like new uniforms and a nice canteen, builds the trust you need to make the hard changes later. And what's really fascinating is that PepsiCo admitted that they learned a huge lesson too. They originally figured the local soda, Mongola, would just kind of die out without any advertising. But it didn't. It stayed incredibly popular. They realized that when you're buying a company, you can't just look at the spreadsheets. You have to understand the people, the culture, and the reality on the ground. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. Years after this huge success, the plant's ranking has actually slipped a bit, from 6th place down to 16th. It's a powerful reminder that even after a picture-perfect turnaround, the work is never really done. Transformation isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a journey you have to stay on forever.